Hey there. Before we begin this first episode of the Wizard and Glass season of our show, want to let you know two ways to support this show and the network. If you want to give some money directly, go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv and check out the options we have there. Also, if you're going to be buying anything on Amazon, be it Dark Tower books, audiobooks, or anything else, doesn't even have to do with the Dark Tower, go to Duckfeed.tv/tipjar and use the link there for Amazon shopping. Now, let's go talk about this crazy train some more. Welcome to Radio Free Midworld, a podcast about the Dark Tower series of books by Stephen King. My name is Cole Ross, and I am your host. And today I'm joined by Evan Jones Thorne.
Hi, Cole.
Hey, Evan. It's just the two of us today because of some weird scheduling stuff.
That's pretty exciting.
I know, right? Yeah. So thank you for hopping on.
Yeah. No, I'm. This'll be fun.
Yeah.
So we never hang out like this, Cole.
No, usually there's a third person. Oftentimes it's Autumn.
Usually it's one of those Greer folk.
Ugh, one of those Greers. Am I right? Yeah,
I would say yes.
Also, looking at the guest list, yes, there.
Yeah, pretty much yes.
Yeah, it is true. Yeah, we're here talking about Wizard and Glass, which is the fourth book in the series. After our weird mid-season, lengthy talking about other stuff, kind of break there, talking about The Stand and The Mist and all of that, all those movies. I bet you didn't realize the Dark Tower movie came out at the beginning of that mid-season.
Oh, I realize.
Yeah. No, I wanted to keep... There was a lot to talk about because Wizard and Glass starts bringing in a bunch of disparate elements. So we kind of needed to talk about The Stand. We kind of needed to talk about The Mist. But also mimicking the gap between when The Wastelands and Wizard and Glass came out.
Yeah, I think that it's... I don't know if I ever caught this before reading it through this time, but I thought it was interesting that the acknowledgments are specifically the two people that harangued him into getting back to writing another Dark Tower book.
Yep. Yeah, usually he saves them for, I mean, nowadays it's when a grandkid is born, but it is for members of his family or for collaborators. I forget who were the two people who goaded him back into the saddle.
Oh, I don't remember their names, but I think it was like the two people that helped with fan mail or something along those lines.
Okay.
Just reading and responding to letters mostly about Roland and company.
Yeah. It's like, hey, a lot of people really want this to happen. They're afraid you're going to die. Yeah. So yeah, this came out in November of 1997, a solid 7 years after The Wastelands came out, which is kind of ridiculous because the Wastelands ends on a cliffhanger and it literally begins with the final chapter of The Wastelands. That is the prologue.
Yeah. It's I remember when I was reading The Wastelands and I was thankfully able to immediately pick up Wizard and Glass. But just looking at the copyright dates and thinking about how angry I would have been if I'd been reading them as they came out.
Yeah, so we're going to have to put a pin in that and make sure we talk to either Autumn or Jeremy, one of those Greers, because I believe that both of them were OG in the sense that they had to wait through that little drought that happened.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
Yeah,
I forget how recently some of these books came out. Like, I don't know why, but for some reason I just have like this association with a lot of Stephen King stuff as it being a lot
the
older.
80s. Yeah, the 80s.
The 80s are before, and like the only Stephen King books that are like in my consciousness as being like anything close to contemporary is like The Green Mile and Hearts in Atlantis and Under the Dome.
Under the Dome's a little bit more recent, but Green Mile and Hearts in Atlantis were like The late 90s.
When I say that, I mean like when I was paying attention.
Yeah.
And I know that there have been a whole bunch of others, and I have no idea why those are the only ones that my brain acknowledges as being post 80s. But
I just
here we are.
over the break here, I got a wild hair, and I decided to listen to 11/22/63.
I still have not read that yet.
It's really good.
I've heard it's really good. I've heard the show on Netflix is really good too.
Yeah, I think it's a Hulu series.
Just
so people don't go looking for it. Yeah, little bit wary of the Hulu thing because it stars James Franco. But man, that's a good story.
Yeah, I feel like James Franco is like about 70% of the time he's James Franco, and then the rest of the time he's fantastic.
Right. Yeah, he's pretty inconsistent is what I've seen.
If you give him the right kind of role, he absolutely destroys it, but I have no idea what kind of role that is. Like there hasn't really been any like consistent pattern to what types of James Franco characters I enjoy.
Yeah, it might be this. I'm trying to put a little bit of distance in between because I don't know, experiencing the same thing twice that quick in a row seems a little bit ill-advised.
I'm really enjoying I'm right now listening to the audiobook of Slaughterhouse-5 that he narrated, and it's a lot better than I was expecting.
Yeah, that would have to be better than the one that I listened to, which was narrated by Ethan Hawke. It was very, very dry and very maudlin, and I know that is a very it's a pretty fucked up book, but there has to be a little bit of playfulness to it.
Ethan Hawke has whatever the opposite of a face made for radio is.
What do you mean?
Like,
a voice made for television?
Sort of. Like he is like a totally fine actor and a decent looking dude, but like if I was just listening to his voice without any kind of visual context, that would not be an enjoyable thing.
Yeah, it's a little bit of it was a little bit of a bummer. Sounds like the James Franco one would be better. This isn't off topic.
It's nowhere near as good as the John Malkovich reading of Breakfast of Champions, because that's maybe the best audiobook that anyone has ever made.
That is such good casting. Yeah. This isn't off topic because 11/22/63 has a very minor tower connection.
It does. I do know that.
Yeah. I was very surprised to see that. In fact, we're going to get there in this book, in this episode.
Well, you're going to get there. I only know that it exists. I don't know what it is.
I'll call it out. I'll mention what it is because it also ends up being kind of a running Stephen King thing a little bit. So you mentioned that you got to this right after you finished The Wastelands. Got to The Wizard and Glass. I forget, or whenabouts was this when you were getting into it?
Oh, I probably was about maybe 15, 16, I want to say.
Okay.
It was definitely high school, like mid to late high school.
So prime time, especially for this particular book.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this book, I have a couple of friends who are really into The Dark Tower, and this is their favorite of the series.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to say this is my least favorite because it's not, because it's fucking fantastic.
Right.
But it has always made me uncomfortable. I think probably because I can relate to the characters way more than I like admitting, or I could when I read it anyway.
to the kids? Like to Roland's original ka-tet? Or
yeah.
It's pretty good. So we should say what is special about this book. We're going to get to it at the end of this chapter. Though the framing story of this is a direct follow-up to The Wastelands, the bulk of it, and the thing that I think a lot of people's opinion of the book lives or dies on, is this flashback story where Roland, finally gets around to telling the assembled group more about his past, more about his youth, immediately after he took his test and became a gunslinger, that recollection that we had in the first book.
Yeah. And I always forget how much framing there is. Like when I think about this book, I just think about the flashback.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of, like, for lack of a better term, current plot happening.
Yeah, there's a lot of movement toward the tower. It's not as much of a stopover.
Yeah. And I mean, like, if I could be mistaken, but we're not even going to, we're just going to get up to the start of the flashback tonight, right?
Right. We're going to get up to the reason why Roland travels to the place he travels to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the next episode is going to get into the flashback proper.
Yeah. Which I'm cool with that, because this is basically just a continuation of The Wasteland, which is great.
I know, right? well, let's get into this book, which is subtitled Regard, because all of them have these R word subtitles. It is an extension because, like we said, the prologue is just the last chapter of the Wastelands. If you need
for our coverage of the prologue, please see the season finale of, I don't know what season this is.
This would be season 4.
Is it?
Yeah.
I'm not sure how seasons work with podcasts, because
it's real loose.
Yeah. I'm not a podcasting professional like some of us.
The iTunes just added seasons to the spec, and I'm really I need more clients to actually put in support for that before I start labeling things as seasons. But yeah,
that makes sense.
I think it's going to be tough after went through the keyhole. But this would be season 4. Yeah. But yeah, see the end of the last season. If you need a little recap, remember that the ka-tet ended up being trapped on this suicidal talking monorail named Blaine. This death train loves himself some riddles, and Roland, coming from a barony that really valued riddles, buys some time by reenacting the fair day riddling of his own childhood. Betting their lives, saying like, hey, you can kill us as long as we can't stump you. If we give you a real stumper, then you need to let us go. And so the train is barreling toward Topeka, and we're going to see how literal that actually is as they as they open up. What do you think about the cold open on this? You know, the scenes of just the carnage that Blaine is leaving in his wake as he sonic booms down the countryside.
It is, every time I read this book, it is more jarring than I remember.
I'd forgotten about this too. The rat with his guts on the outside. It
is just like, the whole thing is just like viscerally unpleasant and basically to no end. Which I kind of really appreciate on some level.
Yeah. Well, you remember at the end of book 3, they're going over those volcanoes with pterodactyls and gigantic beetles and stuff. Things are a little bit better here, but not much. You know, like animals with organs on the outside. There's a deer with a 5th leg growing down, and that is described as the last
boneless leg.
Yeah, it's got a big old.
Why that detail makes it a million times worse.
Is there still a hoof at the end? Does he have some kind of flail attached to it?
Oh God, I didn't even think about the hoof.
Yeah, I love the robot who has been walking into the corner for so long that the metal of the building is bowed out.
Yeah. And I like that he characterizes it as that's all the progress he's made.
Yep.
One of my favorite things about this current reading of this series is just how many like just really richly described details he puts in that don't go anywhere. Like I know I noticed it before, and I don't know if I think the first time I just assumed that it would go somewhere and then didn't realize when it didn't, and then subsequent readings it's just kind of I've just kind of like disregarded it because I knew what was coming. But this time I'm reading through it with a different, like trying to pick out different things. And
right.
like you mentioned, at the end of the Wastelands, there's pterodactyls and like there's no dinosaurs in this fucking series.
No. I mean,
not at all.
There were, but they were down there. You passed over them.
But he makes a point to talk about how there's dinosaurs, and then there are no dinosaurs that make an appearance that in any way affects the events of the story.
But then,
and I don't know why, but that's just really hitting me every time there's something like that. And I think part of it is that I have a deeper understanding for. Or a deeper appreciation, rather, for world building than I did before.
Yeah.
But also, it's just really fucking funny.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of those details, those asides, are paced as though they are jokes. You know.
Yeah.
When you say they don't go when you say they don't go anywhere, that's true. Except sometimes they do. You know, he mentions these robots that are walking around. Well, I mean, we've seen that the old ones have this amazing technology. We've seen the gigantic, basically the computerized city of Lud as manifested through this monorail. That's going to come up later. The presence of robots, especially ones that kind of serve these clerical functions, right?
Sure.
Mentioning, bringing back the idea of threaded stock, of muties, and, the fact that, just actual non-mutated animals are really valuable. That's going to be like a key plot point for this book when they get to Hambry.
That's true.
Yeah. So like some of
I was a good boy and didn't read ahead and wasn't. It's been a while since I've read past the Wastelands.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Like I've read the whole series a couple of times, but I most recently just read Drawing of the Three in the Wastelands and kind of got distracted by life, I guess.
Yeah, that's reasonable. Yeah, no. So you're it's been long enough where this is new to you again.
Yeah, we're getting into not uncharted territory, but it's definitely the details are fuzzy.
Yeah.
As far as looking forward goes, and I'm kind of trying to keep it that way.
I love that, keeping the suspense up. I got you, fam. I got the call forwards.
Yeah.
It's fine. But yes, regardless, all of this is for naught because every scene that is described is wiped away by Blaine's sonic boom. Described first off as like just the whoosh of air knocking the stuff over a couple of yards, and then shortly afterward the shockwave just obliterating everything. Like Blaine is going suicidally fast, quite literally. And that is having terrible effects on the world below. Not that it was doing so great to begin with. Yeah. Inside, things are not going that great either because it's time for the riddles, and they've got a strategy where they're going to test him with varying levels. They're going to give him a difficulty slider. It's going to be like Wolfenstein, hurt me more. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one easy, one sort of hard, one quite hard, and one very difficult.
Yes. Yeah. And the scary part is that Blaine answers all of them immediately, because of course he does.
Well, the scary part is actually that he acknowledges that that's exactly what they were doing.
Uh-huh.
They were trying to gauge his abilities, and they expected him to answer all of them, but I don't think that Roland expected him to realize exactly what was going on.
Right. And that itself is a test of his capabilities, right? To actually see what his situational awareness is.
Although when you say he answers all of the riddles immediately, that's not totally accurate, because the first riddle, I think is it Susanna that reads the second one, or does she do the first one?
I forget the exact order.
Yeah, it doesn't actually really matter, but the one that Susanna asks is what has four wheels and flies, and at least Eddie, if no one else notices that Blaine makes a clicking sound, like somebody like clicking their tongue against the roof of their mouth, like they're thinking.
Yeah.
And there's just a minute hesitation. Because what has four wheels and flies, a garbage truck, is not a great riddle. It's mostly just a really stupid pun.
Right. Yeah, and he gets angry. I forget. It has to have been Eddie who fires one off that is based on wordplay like that. And Blaine, in addition to being this really smug, condescending prick, also is a real connoisseur of riddles. He doesn't like any of them that
he doesn't like silly questions.
Yeah,
he won't play silly games.
And ends up being very important. He doesn't like any of them that are just based on linguistic coincidence as opposed to something you can actually think your way through. But yeah, does not like puns and gets angry about this. So they decide to, keep themselves just to the ones that either Roland knows, and their hope is that, because everything happens for a reason, their winner will be in Jake's book, because otherwise, why would he have been drawn to it? But yeah, that click is also very important, and I like that what we're seeing in this is them realizing that he was either programmed with or cobbled together some sense of emotion, so that click, which could just be like a speaker turning on and off or whatever, it is timed as though he was kind of clicking his tongue as though he was thinking, right?
Yeah, and one of my favorite things about Blaine, because I really fucking love Big Blaine and Little Blaine just as characters. One of my favorite things about the characterization of Blaine is that it's specifically left ambiguous. Like King specifically says that they don't know, like, oh, was he programmed with emotions? Was he like, is this something he was built with, or did it just kind of like manifest over time? Like, is he just mimicking what he's seen other people do? And then that kind of comes back into play when Eddie takes his final round, which we'll get to.
Yeah. Well, that's a thing, right? He is insane. He has gone sideways from all these years of loneliness,
yes.
And because of the world moving on, this emotionality could be the function of what happens when a computer just goes nuts.
Yeah, and I think that's if I had to guess, I would say that that's canonically the truth, because that's what happened with Shardik.
Yep, and that also happens with a notable character in book 5.
Yep, which I'm not going to talk about because we are not there.
No, well, I want to put it there and say that is a theme. There is evidence for what happens here.
No, that is definitely a thing that happens in this fiction.
Right. Yeah. So it's pretty great. Another thing that's pretty great is Roland reprising a scene from the Wastelands. Immediately turns to Eddie and tells him, "Hey, don't fuck around here." Okay, specifically, don't be foolish, because Eddie, back around the campfire, dropped one of his dead baby jokes. Tasteless, just kind of bringing some of his Brooklyn street jabbing.
Favorite.
Everybody's when they're
favorite,
in middle
all
school.
ages, family-friendly joke material.
When they're in middle school.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, which hurts Eddie, but this is important, right? Because it helps him start to put stuff together. He goes into a zone, and like he kind of becomes catatonic, like just looking at his feet, to the point where Susanna's annoyed because like he is not reacting as everybody else is, because he is trying to put all of this together, trying to think through the problem.
Yeah, and I don't remember who sees first that he's in a zone, but there's a part where Susanna's looking at him, and it's something to the effect of, you wouldn't have known that he was thinking from the slack look on his face.
she was scared of his just slack jawed stare.
Which to me, like, that is like such a good, succinct summation of Eddie as a character is when he's really thinking.
Mm-hmm.
You might think he's an idiot.
Yep. Everything kind of shuts down.
And that's kind of when he's kind of in his head and we get a peek into that, that's basically where his mind is taking him is how he might not be the smartest or the fastest or the strongest, but he can get into the zone. And when he does that and when he's able to just really commit everything that he has, he can pretty much talk anybody into anything.
Right. Well, we should say what's happening here, because we get like little flashes of it as it goes on. He's been pretty much free of Henry, his memory, his voice of Henry, ever since he carved the key and got Jake into this world. But he's thinking back and putting these pieces together, remembering what is it? Roland teaching Jake how to light a fire, move the flint in closer, and thinking back to talking about who they would give a fucking rupture to on the basketball court, and specifically having a recollection of a time with Henry. And this is notable because it's I might be wrong, but I think it's the only time that there is just like an unequivocally positive memory of Henry. Right. Eddie even remarks on it. Like, most of the time Henry was a royal pain and a bad thing. Like, but this was the only time that he said something nice without really wanting anything in return. Yeah. But that's where his head is at, and I want to save the revelation for when he gets ready to make his attack. Oh, for sure. Wow, it's so good. While he's there, Jake notices that his wound on his hand, where Oi bit him to hang on as he dangled over the river's end, is healing, because Blaine and the Barony coach has all of these just futuristic meshes and waves and stuff like that numb pain and heal wounds. He even has like these endorphin inducing things. He tells Jake, an 11-year-old boy, "Oh, I can give you your first sexual experience, with a sex symbol from your level of the tower. How about Marilyn Monroe or Rita Hayworth, or how about Edith Bunker?" One of these things is not like the others. And Jake picks up on that right away, and he laughs about it, and he realizes how like potentially suicidally stupid laughing at Blaine is, but he can't help himself. Yeah, he stops himself like right away. And he's laughing not just because the idea of boning down on Edith Bunker, the wife from All in the Family, if people don't know that, is humorous. Noted sex symbol. Yeah. Well, it takes all kinds, Evan. Okay. Yeah, it does. It takes a village of different strokes. Yeah. So aside from just telling Blaine, "Yeah, I'm too young for that, you fucking creep," and then Blaine's like, "Well, okay," offers off the table. Okay. He realized it made a mistake. Like, it hadn't really made any mistakes before, aside from just doing his kind of thing. And Blaine is humiliated by this, so he decides to deafen them. Yeah, as we all do when embarrassed. Yep. I just crank the volume up until everybody's ears start bleeding, and they start crying. He stops. He stops at what I can only assume is a charging station specifically built for this purpose. Yes. But it's these. Is it? I don't remember. Is it called the Falls of the Hounds because of the statues, or are the statues there because of the name, or do we not know? I believe that it's called. My read was that it was called the Falls of the Hounds because they had built the statue in the shape of the dog. Yeah. Out of it. But yeah, there's this dog statue that somehow collects energy from the beam that Blaine's track runs along, and then shoots it from its
eyes, which is like, I guess, a nice design touch,
Mm-hmm.
into Blaine's battery to charge him when he gets past the point where his fuel reserves would take him, I guess.
Right. And this gives him a little bit more time. Like he really exhausted himself getting here, so it extends the riddling a little bit. The statue is actually over a gigantic waterfall that I think Jake says makes Niagara Falls look like something at Disneyland.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so loud. Is because of just how massive it is. It's big enough that it's the water vapor is casting moonbows up at them.
Yeah. Have you ever been to Niagara Falls, Cole?
Once when I was like 10.
Yeah, I went when I was like probably 14.
Yeah.
My family, we did like the whole Maid of the Mist thing, where you get on a boat and they give you a poncho that does as much as the goggles. And
sorry, you caught me off guard.
I was pretty proud of that. I'm glad you laughed. But like you get on a boat and you go like super close to the falls and you just get drenched, and it's really intense and it's super loud and overwhelming, and it is on the verge of being painfully loud.
Mm-hmm.
And so what Blaine does is he does this a couple of times, but he turns the floor and the walls of the barony coach. Either he turns them transparent or he is projecting a live feed of the outside. It doesn't really matter. However you prefer your science fiction to handle that shit.
It's described as a projection. He doesn't actually make it invisible.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then he also turns on the external audio and he gradually turns it up to what he says is full volume, but
it would have to be amplified if he was trying to hurt them.
I think it's pretty reasonable to assume that it's amplified to the point that they're all just like writhing in pain on the ground and screaming, but they can't hear each other screaming. And like that's not natural waterfall volumes.
A little bit of a dick move. Yeah.
But he says, I was hoping that might make you I was hoping you would enjoy that and that it might make you forget my mistake in the matter of Edith Bunker. Which
I love sentences.
Oh,
especially good ones like that.
Just the most passive aggressive bullshit. It's beautiful.
Fuck you, Blaine. I mean, if you didn't know everything that you needed to know, at some point before this, Blaine says, he asks, well, would I lie to you? And Jake says, yes. And then Blaine doesn't have any reproach. Like, he just laughs. Like, yep, I definitely would.
Yep.
I'm not programmed to tell the truth. Oh, man. So
yeah.
They get back on the road. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. And did we didn't talk about the Faraday goose metaphor.
No, I mentioned that it was like the Faraday riddling.
And I feel like that's worth mentioning because I don't remember. Did you guys talk in the last episode of the Wastelands about how Blaine desperately wants to commit suicide?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
He wants to do what Patricia, his opposite number, did.
So anybody who hasn't listened or hasn't listened in a while to the last one, that's what we're dealing with here.
Right. He wants the only thing that is stopping him from killing them right away on his way out is the promise of one last good riddling.
Yeah. And the deal that they make, and Roland makes very, very certain that the terms are very clear and agreed upon by everyone, which is also significant.
Yep.
Is it's based on the Faraday riddling challenge from Roland's youth, which essentially everybody in the town would get together and submit riddles, and then they would be asked they'd stand in a queue and be asked riddles, and whoever could answer the most without getting stumped would take home the biggest goose, basically.
The biggest goose in the barrel. It was like a last man standing riddling contest.
Yeah. Riddling as a sport isn't really something we have, so it's a little ambiguous as to how it's judged, I think.
Right.
But not to Roland, and Roland and Blaine both understand completely clearly the rules, and on a small scale like this, it's pretty easy to pick up on.
Right.
But the goose for the ka-tet is being able to walk away with their lives, and the goose for Blaine is killing them all by crashing into the piers at the end of the line.
Right.
So,
and he cannot.
That just seems like some useful context, so we know where everybody's head is at right now.
Right, yeah. And importantly, even though there is a time limit, like, okay, we need to be done by the time we reach Topeka. They cannot end. It's not fair. It's against the rules. If they end with a riddle left unsolved.
Right.
Which
comes into play
it has
in a second here.
It does. It hasn't come into play just yet, because Blaine just does everything. It answers everything nearly immediately, right? Yeah. And will also cite the alternate answers and tell where it came from, which highlights some of the absurdity of what's happening here, which is you are trying to stump a machine that has you're trying to stump the internet. Is what you're doing.
You're trying to riddle with Wikipedia.
Right. Yeah. So.
It's totally absurd. And Jake has the Riddly Dumb book, and the hardest riddles are in the back, and he asks Blaine the last 10 riddles, and he answers all of them, and then he asks the riddle of Samson from the Bible, which Blaine not only answers immediately, but like you said, gives the whole background and context of. And it's basically everybody has resigned themselves to the fact that they're just fucked.
Right. He gives them everything but chapter and verse.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, okay, so Eddie in his head back on the back on the basketball courts in Brooklyn. And the nice thing that Henry has said about him, they're talking about, hey, who would you want to have on your side in a fight? And Henry says, oh, I want Eddie. And everybody's saying like, oh, are you crazy? He couldn't fight his way out of a wet paper bag. And Henry's answer is the epiphany. The answer is, when Eddie gets in the zone, he could talk the devil into setting himself on fire. And this plays into something that's been around since book 1, and something we talked about a little bit in book 3 as well. The idea that, I don't shoot with my gun, I shoot with my mind.
Yeah.
The gunslinger's encounter doesn't always their gun isn't always a gun, right?
Yeah.
The battle isn't always a firefight.
Eddie references that fairly early on, which is why Roland tells everyone else to basically leave him alone and let him do his thing.
Right. He knows, he knows that he's pulled something up. When I was saying that, it was really hard for me not to just quote the lesson monologue from the Three Amigos. Maybe your El Guapo is illiteracy. Sometimes maybe your El Guapo is a large man named El Guapo. Yeah. Sometimes your gun isn't a gun, right? And so Eddie, he does. Go ahead.
Yeah, just the way that you've summed it up in the show notes is one of the most perfect sentences. I'm going to read it for everybody right now.
Okay.
Eddie kills Blaine with dead baby jokes.
Yup.
Which is literally what happens.
Yeah, it's
amazing.
It's a master stroke, and
yeah.
So caveat here. Dead baby jokes are tasteless. There was a time in high school or whatever where they would get a laugh for shock value or whatever, but it's not something I would do. it's an amazing way for Eddie to do this. He's basically he's back on the streets of Brooklyn playing the dozens with with Blaine. He doesn't start with the dead baby jokes.
He starts by repeating Susanna's riddle about what has four wheels and flies.
Right.
Which pisses Blaine right the fuck off. and it just gets worse from there.
Yeah. Eddie understands if he can make Blaine angry, he can overheat it, essentially. So it's the combination of goading him, again, using his fucking trash mouth, as Richie Tozier would say, to raise him into a fit of pique, but also telling jokes, which are kind of riddles, technically riddles. They have answers. They're punchlines.
Yeah, it's a question answer, which is the structure of a riddle.
Right. And Blaine tries to say, hey, that's not in the spirit of this. Roland says, no, we agreed. Like we didn't talk about quality or taste or anything like that. Right. So Eddie is forcing Blaine into a completely illogical mode of thinking. And he's trying, he succeeds at it. He gets it. He complains about it. At one point he says, hey, I need more time. I'm like, no, do you cry off? Are you are you going to cry uncle? Because we can end this right now. And rather than surrender and admit that he is so overtaxed that he is spewing basically garbage text, he
starts singing in French.
Yep, he starts singing Velcro Fly in French.
Yeah, which is I don't remember that detail from before, but it's brilliant.
Uh-huh. Well, it's so it could have just been Velcro Fly, but making it in a different language brings a little bit more surreality to it.
Yeah. It's that's totally what would happen if you just completely managed to fuck up the internet, some weird collage of information that is useless and nonsensical.
Yeah. so he uses these jokes to kill him, and Blaine dies saying I hate you forever. And takes little Blaine with him. Yeah. And so they're careening toward Topeka, but not as quickly. I think they were at 900 miles per hour or something at their peak. They coasted into Topeka. Yeah,
the engines shut off. So Roland has everybody move to the back of the train and let the front of it take the impact, and they're tossed around, but fine.
Yeah. And so falls Blaine. And so rises Eddie. This is his peak, I think. He's always a really good character, and he's always a really good viewpoint.
Yeah.
But
no, there's the scene where he finishes telling the jokes, and it talks about just the battle fog has descended, and he just takes out the gun and fans the hammer directly into the map that had been serving as Blaine's face. It's oh shit.
Yep.
Eddie is fucking legit.
I forgot to include the detail that he decided to finish Blaine off with his guns. Yeah. Man, I just love the idea that somebody could fast talk their way into killing the internet.
Have you? I'm going to assume yes, but have you seen the IT Crowd?
No.
Oh,
is it good?
It's one of my favorite comedies.
Okay.
Ever, and I'm fairly certain the whole thing's on Netflix. But there's
I've seen it. I don't know if it's still on there because stuff has been leaving Netflix. But
yeah, but there's a third season episode that is legitimately my single favorite episode of any comedy television show ever. But there's also a whole segment where the two IT techs convince their effectively computer illiterate manager that the internet is contained in a box.
Okay.
And then she can bring that to a company-wide meeting because she doesn't have anything to show. So she'll just they convince her that she's bringing the entire internet.
Okay.
And then nobody else knows anything. So she tells them that this box is the internet.
Okay.
And everybody believes her. And then I forget what happens exactly, but something happens where she falls and drops the box and it breaks everywhere and everybody panics.
Okay.
It is just one of the most ridiculous, asinine scenes.
Yeah.
And anytime there is any talk about the internet as a singular thing, that's kind of where my head goes.
Having worked with a lot of, let's say, tech company marketers, that feels strangely close to the truth.
God, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
I've always worked more on like the tech minded side of things, but
Yeah.
oh my God.
Oh, those beleaguered subject matter experts. Oh man. So grateful to still have their lives and not be turned into toothpaste by the impact, as Susanna says.
So, subject matter experts?
Oh, subject matter experts, like the person who.
No, they're grateful to have their lives and not be turned into toothpaste.
No, I
assume that everyone is at any given moment.
Right. I'm specifically.
I was making a very stupid joke.
Okay, no, I thought that I had made I knew that I had made a very inelegant transition. I just wanted to get us back on the rail. Ironically enough.
I was making a very dumb, very, very low bar humor joke.
Oh, it's fine. Oh, I got you.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
And I took you serious.
Next time on Radio Free Midworld.
Yeah. So they get out and they climb on top of this wreck, and they notice that they are on Highway 70. It's Topeka, Kansas. Like, it's not just a town named Topeka. This is Topeka, Kansas, or one of them.
Yeah.
Also, they hear a terrible, terrible sound.
Yeah,
which
the audio equivalent of the smell of rotting meat.
Yes. It is the very embodiment of unreality. Jake likens it to a time when he was on the subway, which it doesn't make sense that a rich kid would be riding the subway. But hearing a busker who was playing a musical saw, that kind of whining, humming, warbling kind of sound, sounds Hawaiian, doesn't it? Fun little detail on that. Susanna also remembers that guy from 20 years earlier. He
was young when she saw him and old when Jake saw him.
Right.
Which, yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Roland faints
because a whole bunch of images, a past that he, thought was long buried, comes rushing back to him. These memories of the Coos, of Jonas, DePape, and Susan.
Okay, I have to interrupt for a second here. Is it is it canonically pronounced Coos? Is that how the audiobooks say it? Because it's C-O-umlaut-O-S.
Coos or Coos? Yeah, I say Coos because
I've always said Coos in my head, but this time reading through it, I was like, is it Coos? Is it Kuos? Is it Coos?
Yeah. Frank Muller calls it the Coos or the Coos.
Okay.
Something like that. I always feel weird saying coos because I think that's a slang term for
that's
vagina.
Not a super great slang term for a thing.
No, but it's referring to the area where that woman lives, and we're going to meet her here pretty soon. She's a witch. We'll find out next episode.
Yeah.
But yes, this is a thinny, is what it is. After they rescue him from fainting. And
can we take 1 second to talk about how a thinny is the lamest word in this entire series for something so huge and serious and dangerous?
Okay, I was about to say you're saying the lamest word is thinny when the series also contains popkins.
No, not at all. But for something this consequential,
right? Yeah. It feels of a piece with other kind of midworld slang.
It does, but at the same time, anything ending with Y or IE, IES,
It sounds diminutive.
It does, and I know that's like.
It's a literal
I
description
don't know,
of what
but
it is.
I assume that what King is kind of trying to get across is that like language isn't the same, and so that association in like the High Speech of Gilead wouldn't be the same.
Right.
But I'm reading it in fucking American English, and it sounds lame as shit.
It's the word that King decided to use.
Yeah, it has bothered me since the first time I read this book, and it has not abated. Not ever bothered me any less.
Yeah. It doesn't bother me, and that doesn't mean it shouldn't bother you.
It's a small thing.
Yeah.
It's a small, like it's not like it obviously doesn't ruin the experience of reading the book for me. But just every time I read it, every time I get to the point where he talks about a thinny, it's like, really? That's the word you're going with?
Okay. We're just going with the first idea that we have, huh?
All right.
Yeah. I think my affection for it just comes from like it's a really cool concept, and I like the way that he describes it. Yeah.
No, it's a super amazing like just like a one like the way that Stephen King envisions like his multiverse and the way that it interacts with itself is like it's awesome. It's super, super cool. And describing thinnies as sores on the face of reality, or it's like everything about them is great, and I love it, and is super cool and impressive and kind of terrifying, except for the name.
Yeah.
I don't have a whole lot to. I don't have like a thing with that, but
it has better SEO optimization than the Mist does. which is what this is. That's what the Mist was in the short story. That's why we covered that book,
right?
Or that short story or novella or whatever you want to call it. When we say it soars on the skin of reality, it isn't just an ouchy place. It is literally the place where, because the tower is bending, different levels of the tower are rubbing against each other, and the fabric of reality gets indistinct in certain places.
And that applies to all realities.
Yes.
It's not just that there's like, oh, the place where two dimensions or two planes or two worlds meet is like the boundary is weak there. Like that's kind of a fairly common fantasy trope.
Mm-hmm.
The idea here is that it is a weakening that is consistent throughout all possible realities,
right?
As a result of a weakening of the tower, which is super cool once you kind of buy into just the magnitude of what they're dealing with.
Yeah, the tower encompasses size. Yeah. And so like it isn't just a thin spot. It manifests as kind of this greenish, shimmering, silvery fog that creates this sound, that has this, the very sound of unreality attendant to it. But things can move through it. In the Mist, creatures came out. This otherworldly mist came out of that that thin spot. And here, our ka-tet has actually gone through it. Roland and Eddie and Susanna and Oy and Jake have gone through on Blaine. Instead of going to the Topeka in Midworld, they've gone into the Topeka in a version of our world, specifically a version of our world where in 1986 most of the population of the United States was wiped out by a super flu named Captain Trips, and that's why nobody is here, and that's why everything is graffitied and marked up with "Pray for Us." So yeah, this isn't the world of The Stand because it doesn't take place in either 1980 or 1990, but it's really similar.
The way that they reveal where they are is really kind of spooky too, because they find a newspaper machine of all things, and they take the paper out, and they're reading this headline and the front page story about Captain Trips, or Tube Neck, which I forgot that it's also called Tube Neck.
Yep.
Which sounds like something Brayton would make up.
Oh man. Yeah, that guy's got a bad case of tube neck, doesn't he?
Right?
Yeah, it does.
Like I feel like Tube Neck is something that the pitch would market a cure for.
Yep. Or would market as an alternative to like those airplane travel pillows that go around your neck.
Yeah, it might just be something they market as a product.
Yeah. We're doing fan fiction of the pitch now.
Read The Stand pretty recently. Totally forgot that Captain Trips was also called Tube Neck.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite details, is that there are regional differences. We call it Captain Trips.
Yeah, no, I remember that. I just always forget that Tube Neck is one of them, because that's ridiculous.
Yep.
But yeah, and he gets to the last page and drops the newspaper, and Susanna kind of grabs it, and it's just this obituary with countless names in tiny print.
Yeah.
And
she, so Jake is shocked by the enormity of it. Just, all of America, probably all the world is dead. And this could have happened, not in Eddie's world because he was taken after 1987, but like this could be the future for Jake or for Susanna.
Yeah. And so in order to kind of try and like reconcile that, I guess, Jake starts checking out the cars to see if there are any cars that he doesn't recognize, but he realizes pretty quickly that because it's 1986, not 1977, he doesn't recognize any of the cars anyway.
Right. So he starts looking at the badges and stuff like that.
Yeah, and he asks Eddie too.
Right. Yeah. And so
they find a Takuro Spirit, which is a car that comes up a few times.
Yes. Yeah. It becomes kind of the mascot. It becomes a way to show this is an alternate reality, or this is not Keystone Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah. They see a sign for the Kansas City Monarchs, which was actually a team. Like, this comes up later. King thought he was just being clever.
Forget about that. Yeah.
Yeah. But the Monarchs were a Negro League team. So that this would have been an alternate city, an alternate reality where the major league team ended up taking that name, right?
Yeah,
but it's meant to be just
or an alternate, much more racist reality.
True. Things don't always get better. Also, people drink Nozola, which is another dumb name for a thing that I really enjoy. I'm positive I could go on like Redbubble or something like that and get a T-shirt for Nozola.
I've always, and this is dumb and irrational, and I have no idea if like how the legality of it would work out. I've always been kind of bummed out that the Fallout series uses Nuka-Cola instead of Nozola.
Oh yeah,
because that would just be like the coolest crossover to like never comment on, never reference, never acknowledge. Just
yep, that would be pretty good. But I think the timing doesn't work out. This book and Fallout came out in the same year.
Yeah. Well, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so many of these designs are terrible for these Nozola shirts. Wow. Sorry, I could. I'm a very bad graphic designer, and I could do better than this. Yeah. Oh well. But there are a couple things. Like there's a fast food chain called the Boing Boing Burgers, which has nothing to do with the website. But yeah, I don't just like again these little details, but most of these will come up again later on in the series and in the extended the extended Kingiverse to again be the shorthand to say that we are off true. In 11/22/63, it's like mild spoiler, but it's a story about time travel. In one instance, when things go very wrong, the main character ends up seeing Takuro spirits.
Yeah.
Out on the streets and stuff like that. So yeah, pretty cool. Also pretty cool is that Charlie the Choo-Choo's real, baby.
Oh yeah. I would just like to remind you once again of the children's book that my son adores.
Oh no!
That very definitely features Charlie the Choo-Choo.
Is he scared of Charlie?
I mean, it's not literally. It's called Circus Train.
Oh, so shit. Okay. Sorry, I forgot about that. I thought you were...
No, it is not the Charlie the Choo-Choo book. I am not a sadist who hates my son.
Okay. I don't think it would necessarily be bad. Like, the only thing that's creepy about it is the face of Charlie. Right,
which is the fuel of infinite nightmares.
Okay. All right. I'll see, this is why it's good that I don't have kids. but that's right. You have a book that has a similar nightmare person train.
It's a book called Circus Train, and Oliver loves it and wants to read it all the time, and it genuinely fucking unsettles me every single time.
Yeah. But they pass through a little kid's amusement park by a zoo that is full of reeking dead animals. I guess the animals are a little bit fresher than the people, maybe. I don't know. And they see the children's train, and Jake is really scared by it. Again, there's this resonance, there's this echo. Beryl Evans is ka-tet. It's funny, since we mentioned Kurt Vonnegut earlier, I knew this was a comparison, but like the notion of ka-tet is very similar to in Bakunanism from Cat's Cradle, the karas, right?
Yeah.
Same idea. Also a very good book that talks about a few of the themes. It is also an apocalyptic book in a very cool way. Yeah. But they get on the turnpike and they continue southeast. 70 doesn't go southeast. It goes east to west, guys. Sorry, King.
It's Ka. Don't worry about it.
I know where 70 is. And Eddie describes turnpiking when they would have one sober person drive them around on the turnpike, while all of them were high on heroin. Yeah. Notable graffiti. Again, Bango Skank doesn't show up just yet. That comes later. But we have more things being tied in. We have one that says, "Watch out for the walking dude." Or sorry, "Watch for the walking dude," not "watch out." Sorry, I didn't mean to brand that. Walking Dude being one of the names for our good friend Randall Flagg. And also, we have the first appearance of something that is going to be really, really important. Somebody writing "All Hail the Crimson King," or somebody has written "All Hail the Crimson King" along with the image of the red eye on another sign. Roland doesn't know what this means, has no idea who the Crimson King is. Stephen King readers who have been paying attention will recognize the Crimson King from Insomnia. And also from the end of Insomnia, the connection that has to the tower, or the last half of Insomnia, rather, that it has the connection it has to the tower. But this, put a pin in this because it's going to be really important. You ever read Insomnia, Evan?
No, that is one that I have not read yet.
It's, we're going to have to cover it for the show. I don't know that I'm crazy about it.
I know that was, when we did the Rose Matter episode, I thought that I had read Insomnia, and I don't know what I was thinking of because that is one that I have not read yet, but I know that he, I might have been thinking of Dreamcatcher. I'm not sure.
It also takes place in Derry, so.
Yeah, that might be what I'm thinking of because I have read Dreamcatcher.
Yeah.
But I know that he regards it in the same kind of like stiff manner that he talks about Rose Matter.
Yeah, he mentioned that in on-writing. But it's good that the Crimson King gets out of that book.
Yeah, that's all that I know about it is that he does not particularly care for how Insomnia or Rose Matter turned out because they both feel stiff.
Right. That's not my problem with it, but we'll talk about that in 2 years when we get to it.
Cool.
Yeah. So they're headed down this turnpike. They're on the highway, and on either side is this flood of thinny. It stretches out and looks like flat marshland. It gives off that liquidy humming sound like a stench, is what they say. And Roland, he knows, but he doesn't know how he knows, that an object from his world will block out the sound. So he gives all of them these bullets from, that he's been carrying this whole time. Like, Eddie calls him out for being sentimental because these are the wets. These are the ones that got soaked on the the Great Western Sea.
Yeah.
And Roland's a little bit embarrassed that he was so sentimental as to hold on to his original reloads.
Yeah. Which that's one of those weird details about Roland that's just for lack of a better term, charming.
Yeah. I mean, it turns around and says what he decides not to say about himself, or what he is reluctant to admit, says a lot about him too. And that is a lot of the information that he gives us is omission, or somebody calling him out and him not responding. Yeah. Traveling by this thinny and still hearing the faint echo of it through the bullets in their ears exhausts them mentally. Like, it is Lovecraftian in the way that being near it or being exposed to it drains them. So
yeah,
imagine trying to sleep when, next to something that is wailing at you that nothing is real. So they make camp, and in the distance they see this massive building, but only an outline. What do you think of Eddie's dream, where the rose is in danger?
Every time I read this book and I read that dream sequence, I just kind of mentally gloss over it, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
Like, I understand what it's doing, and I understand that the foreshadowing is very present there, and I get that it's a very reasonable dream sequence given the events of this book and the last one.
Right.
But it just never has really made an impression with me.
Yeah. So my problem with it is it's not really composed like a dream. It's composed like a scene from a horror movie from the 80s. A little bit.
Maybe that's what it is. Yeah.
It feels like a scene from a Nightmare on Elm Street movie.
Yeah.
Because they're back.
Yeah, it does.
They're back in the abandoned lot, and there's a bulldozer that breaks through the wall. Initially, it's being driven by Gasher, and then it's being driven by the engineer for Charlie the Choo Choo. And then finally, it's being driven by Roland himself. It's headed for the rose. Again, the rose that represents the tower. And on the blade of the bulldozer is written "All Hail the Crimson King."
Little on the nose.
I mean, a little bit, yeah. But Eddie goes to jump on the rose to save it from the bulldozer and ends up waking up. But yeah, it's that sequence is composed as though he was writing it for a script for film, as opposed to actually having it be dreamlike. And that sucks because they've been pretty good at the dream. He's been pretty good at writing the dream so far. I don't know, it's a minor nit in the overall thing, but what it's communicating is that yes, the threat is moving in closer to the rose. We can't be complacent. They are, traveling in this other world, but they are going along the path of where they assume the beam would be in order to hopefully get out back through it. Unfortunately, what they find out is that there's a large glass building in their way that has been looming over them for days and days, and they're just now finally seeing it through the fog. And Roland, after alluding to this and talking more about his old traveling companions than he has in a while, finally gets up the nerve to tell his story, knowing that it has to be done all in one go, and he has to do it when he says he's going to do it, because otherwise he's going to put it off forever.
Which is, I've always felt like that's a pretty relatable sort of concern, I guess.
Yep. Rip off the Band-Aid quick and do it all in one go.
Yeah. Well, there's that. And then there's also just like, if I don't do it, I'm not going to do it at all.
Well, I guess the Band-Aid thing doesn't hold up because eventually the Band-Aid will fall off.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to find a better metaphor for that. So this begins the flashback. We're not entirely in it because it's kind of half in, half out. He gives us a little bit of a recap of, the flashbacks in The Gunslinger. Talks about seeing his mom with Martin, his dad's, kind of sorcerer, the Merlin to Stephen Deschain's Arthur. That gets confusing because there was a Merlin and Arthur in this world. Forget that. And deciding to go through his gunslinger test far too early in order to get his guns and, get revenge, right? To kill Martin.
Yeah.
Right. And he succeeds, but that wasn't the plan. Which we're going to find out. And the story continues. And this is something we didn't get in book 1, but would have been really more the notion of sex work would have been more at home in book 1 a little bit, because after his victory, he decides, well, if I'm going to be a man, I'm going to be a man. So he goes and loses his virginity to a prostitute.
As we all do.
As one does. And in the afterglow of his act, Roland's dad bursts through the door, picks him up and strangles him, and Roland grabs the gun, and Stephen says, "Shoot me if you will. Why not? Make this abortion complete. Ah, gods, I'd welcome it." Something terrible has happened. Stephen is very upset that his son has followed in his footsteps and also become the youngest person to become a gunslinger. So imagine the shock, of being picked up bodily by your dad while naked.
Yeah, that'd be, not my first choice.
No. If I was picking from a book like I was getting a haircut, give me the dad picking me up while naked. No. So the reason this is happening, is because, Stephen calls Roland a fool. Roland tells him, like, hey, here's what I saw. You've been made a cuckold, not in the alt-right sense, but in the the actual sense,
the actual real sense.
Right. I just don't want people to think I'm making a cuck joke or whatever.
No, not like the shitty, awful contemporary.
Yeah, the weird
bullshit sense.
The racist version of it. Yeah.
No, like the dictionary literal
the sense. The Shakespearean
Yeah.
sense. Yeah. And Stephen says the 6 words I have known for 2 years. Like, this is eating away at him. When Martin and Gabrielle Deschain were dancing, he knew that. Like, Stephen has been in this situation where he's had to kind of keep up the facade, knowing that Martin was a snake who was right there near all of them, who was ready to end everything. And Stephen has kind of been waiting for his time, and his hand is pretty much forced because, Martin, if you remember, was kind of rubbing Roland's face in it, hoping that Roland would go and take the test and fail it and be sent west, to be sent along the road toward John Farson, because Roland, as the son of the Din, is a massive threat to Martin's kind of sway over the kingdom. Am I characterizing that right? Oh,
yeah, I didn't. I thought you characterized it very well and didn't have anything to add.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure, because it gets a little fuzzy here. Stephen's characterization's always a little bit weird. Like, I kind of want, I want his his flashback. Like, if King has another one of these books left in him, I want to hear the adventures of Stephen a little bit.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, see a little bit more of Gilead in its prime, or at least.
I'm almost surprised that hasn't been a graphic novel yet.
Yeah. It'd be a good couple episode or a couple issue arc at the very least. So the setup for this flashback and the setup for kind of the rest of the middle portion of this book is that Roland cannot go back to the palace. If he goes there, if he spends even one night there, he's dead. Because Martin will not be very pleased that his plan has failed. And so he's going to have to be sent east onto the barony of Megis, or Megis, depending on how you want to pronounce that. To a small...
I've always in my head said Megis, and I don't know why.
Yeah, Megis. I forget how Frank Miller says it, which is my canonical version of these. I need to go and listen to that part. Again, I say Megis because, Mexico kind of thing.
Sure.
But he has to go there on this make-work quest to get not as far away from Gilead as possible, but, to go to a backwater where either Martin or John Farson's forces are not going to be, which summons the gods of irony. Because, oh boy, are they headed into the very nest itself. And that's the end. This sets up the story that lasts all night. This unnaturally long night.
Yeah, if we didn't already know that nights when people are telling stories are unnaturally long, that would seem like a very conservative estimate, but we kind of know what's up at this point.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Martin told a story so long that he turned into a skeleton and Roland's hair turned white. Like, it's there. So, not white. He got gray in his hair. I want people to have the right picture of him. He aged into his 40s from his 30s. But time is weird because he'd been going for thousands of years at that point. Anyway, so that is the end of this first chapter, the end of Riddles. We're going to be back next time with the beginning of the chapter called Susan, breaking that one into twos. We're going to end, I believe, right at or right before the kind of sub-chapter or subheading called Shimi. And you're going to see that after, because that's kind of a climax for that. Evan,
yes.
Any final thoughts about this particular portion of the book?
The books have always kind of run together for me, and the first part of this book has always felt like part of the Wasteland, and the first part of the Wastelands has always felt like part of Drawing of the Three. And I guess that doesn't totally matter if you're reading it now and you're not waiting 7 years between books. Mm-hmm. But I like this part because I feel like it gives a couple of really interesting story beats, and you get a lot of really, really good character development, especially with Eddie.
Yeah.
And we get more Blaine, which is fun.
We get more Blaine, and we get to see his ignoble end.
Yeah. And this part it's good. It's largely just kind of picking up from the end of the last one and setting up the rest of this book, which is also really interesting. Mm-hmm. I don't really have too much more to say about it than that.
Yeah. I love this. I think it is quite quite good, quite momentous. The encounter with Blaine, who knows if that would have fit at the end of the Wasteland. Like, only Stephen King knows why he decided to break it when he did. I'm happy that we got it, and if it took him that long to figure out how to bring Eddie's kind of latent bullshit talent to the fore, then I think it was worth it, because this lasts forever as opposed to, the delay, which lasted 7 years.
Right.
It can't be, I always get this wrong. It can't be overstated how important it is that they wander into a version of the world where the Stand has happened, or something approaching that, right? Because people who are reading this and know about the series now know that it kind of is this omnibus conglomeration of all of Stephen King's work. This is the biggest time where that has happened, where it isn't just a couple of Easter eggs, like characters from from The Eyes of the Dragon being mentioned by name. Like, this is this is pretty important. We're setting up the antagonist of another book, two antagonists of the other books to be really big figures in this one. This is a real turning point for the series where it becomes metatextual like that. The later books in the series get a lot of shit. It's up to you whether or not that shit is deserved or not, for going too far in that direction. But this is where that starts. And so, I think that this is momentous. I think that this is a good treatment of that. People who listen to those episodes know that I have a great deal of affection for The Stand as well. So it's cool to go back to that world, no matter how awful it is.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we will be back in 2 weeks, like I said, with the first part of the chapter called Susan. Evan, where can people find you on the internet?
I am at Mr_Harder, all spelled out on Twitter. And I am at Very Good Serial Reviews on Instagram, which is making a comeback.
Nice.
And if you're in the Chicagoland area, this is coming out, you said, next week?
This is coming out on early release on October the 24th. And, on Halloween. Happy Halloween, everybody, for everybody else.
Oh. Well, if you're cool enough to be a Patreon backer and get the early release feed, and you also live in the Chicagoland area, you can come see Sad Paul Stanley as Black Sabbath at Beat Kitchen on Saturday, October 28th.
Are you going to be in full makeup?
Oh, you have no idea.
I don't. That's why I asked.
Yeah, no, I cannot answer that question contractually.
Okay.
And by that, I mean I'm not gonna give it away.
Okay.
There's no actual contract.
Awesome. Can you give the details on that one more time?
Yeah, it's Saturday, October 28th, 2017 at Beat Kitchen. Show starts at, I believe, 8 p.m. and Sad Paul Stanley as Black Sabbath is opening the proceedings.
Cool.
It's going to be real dumb.
That is a good pitch.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I need to go to bed because I have a flight early in the morning. If you want to find me on the internet, you can go to @ColeRoss. We have other shows on Duckfeed.tv. It's a whole network. If you
good shows even.
Some of them, yeah. They're okay. No, and if you want to watch me stream video games, it is twitch.tv/Duckfeed.tv.
And definitely tune in for Cole's horror live streams. It's like YouTube but for grown-ups.
Oh, you make me sound so lame.
You don't spend the whole time just screaming, and you actually give thoughtful analysis of what's going on in the game.
Oh, Thank you.
It's enjoyable if you're an adult with adult type sensibilities.
Yeah, if that
who doesn't enjoy incessant screaming.
If that sounds like a thing that would be for you, if you like watching other people play games, that usually happens on weekend nights. Yeah. So until next time, long days and pleasant nights.
Thank you, Si.